So today I'm going to be talking about the Nikon Z6ii that I just bought to replace my Nikon Z5 that I had for about 2 months that I really didn't love that camera, and this is the replacement for it. I'm going to go through the camera itself, some of the settings I used in different situations, and I'm going to show you a bunch of images from my trip here. I'm in Florida right now. If you don't know me, I'm Bill from Bill and Eric Photography. We've been doing, gear reviews and travel photography and just tutorials in general for the last couple of years here on YouTube. And every now and then one of us gets a new camera and we really like to dig into it and give you our opinion on it. So it's exactly what I'm going to do today. The Z6ii just came out a couple of months ago, but it's been out of stock in a lot of places, and I was able to actually grab one at Best Buy. So I found the camera. I've been waiting. I was without a camera for a few weeks. I'd returned my Z5, and so I have it here. So I'm down in Florida right now. I'm in Delray Beach, Florida, and with my family. So I've been doing a little bit of like what I think most people will do with their cameras. Maybe some architectural photography, some sightseeing. Went down to the beach, and got a sunrise this morning. So there's a little bit of everything in here. Some photography of my family. So I was able to test the camera out in quite a few different situations, and I really got a feel for it. So I only have this camera with me, so I'm shooting on it right now. This is what the Z6ii looks like. I'm using the 24-70 f4 lens. I'm at f4 at about 24 millimeters, and I have the camera set to 60 frames per second in 1080p. I'm not using 4K or any of that. Just, this is perfect for YouTube. It's manageable to edit, and this is what I've been using on my Canon M50, so put the same settings here. I'm not super spectacular with video, so I just try to get by with the video settings. But let's talk about the camera. I had the Z5, and I really like the form factor, the size of it. I was coming from the D750 DSLR that I had for 6 years. That was a real workhorse camera that I loved. And the Z5 gave me so many new features that I didn't have on a DSLR. And some of the big ones that I really loved are the touchscreen in the back and the eye menu, and being able to program everything quickly, that you can just change settings on the fly, as well as having physical controls on the back of the camera for different things. But one of the things that I lost, that I missed a little bit from my DSLR, was the little LCD that's up on the top of the camera behind the shutter. It wasn't a big deal because you really have all of your settings on the screen, but with the Z6ii I get that back, and I found myself using it quite a bit. It's much easier to just look down at the camera when it's on a tripod or when you're holding it, so that's something that I really like about this camera. And one of the big issues I was having with the Z5 is the autofocus was giving me fits. I was having all sorts of trouble with it, and I'm going to tell you right off the bat here, the autofocus on the Nikon Z6ii is fantastic. I've had almost no issues. The only time I've had a few issues with the autofocus is when I was photographing my daughter early in the morning. It was almost dark out. The eye autofocus missed a few times. But other than that, it's been super sharp, to the point where I'm not even thinking about it anymore. I just assumed the image is going to be in focus. And with the Z5, I wasn't getting that feeling. I would always have to check, and sometimes it would miss. Even with static subjects like buildings, it would be out of focus. So that kind of stuff, your camera should not have issues with that. My D750 never did. So I feel like I've got good autofocus back with the Z6ii. So that's something that's really great. Now, I didn't, run around and do any like sports photography or anything like that, but I did, give it a little bit of a workout this morning at the beach. So I guess I'll start with that. We were down at the beach this morning, and we wanted to take a picture of the sunrise. It was just me and my daughter. So as we were, waiting for the sun to come up, or as it was coming up, I took a few pictures of her using the eye autofocus, where I would just have her move, or I would move in quick, and never had a problem. It grabbed the focus, and it's super sharp. Now, these images were with my Sigma 70-200 f2.8 lens. The other day when I was having issues with the autofocus, we went down to the beach 2 mornings. The first morning was a lousy morning weather-wise, so we ended up going back today. But the first time I was using the 24-70 f4 lens, and I've used this lens with the Z5 and had some issues with the autofocus. So it could be this lens. The Z5 was giving me problems with all of my lenses. This lens has been great, the 24-70 that I'm using right here. But in really dark situations, I noticed that it's not always spot on with the eye autofocus. My Sigma was. Took a couple pictures of my daughter, but what I really enjoyed here was I was able to take pictures. There were a lot of seagulls around, and I was able to track them and shoot them. So I put the camera in wide. There's different settings in the autofocus, and there's spot, there's a wide autofocus box, there's focus tracking, there's animal focus tracking, there's all sorts of different things. So I tried a few different modes, and I found the one that I really liked the most was not the eye autofocus tracking for animals. It was the wide box autofocus. It covered about, I don't know, maybe half of the screen in the middle of it, and I was able to just lock onto one of the birds and just keep it. I was moving the focus point with the camera. The focus point wasn't moving inside it, but I was able to get some of these images here, and I was pretty happy with that. The birds were moving pretty quickly, and the lens and the camera just locked focus, and it was pretty cool. I got some good shots, so I really liked using this. I didn't really try the eye autofocus for animals. Maybe that's something I'll do in a different video. But I did take a picture of, all right, so my mother-in-law has a dog, and I took this picture of him using the eye autofocus for animals. Now, he wasn't moving, but I was, just moving around a little bit with the camera, and it just tracked his eye all over the place, and it's super sharp. And this is with the Nikon 50mm 1.8, which is a lens that I highly, highly recommend. If you're gonna buy the body only of the Nikon Z6ii, this 50mm lens would be a great lens to start with. The 24-70 is a more versatile lens, but it's got an f4 aperture, so you're not going to get those super shallow depth of field shots. So I was doing a lot of shooting with the 50mm 1.8, and we went down to South Beach one day, and we just shot around. I took all of these images. I only had one lens on the camera the whole day, so everything you see from here forward is going to be the 50 1.8. So in South Beach, they have all the Art Deco architecture. So I thought it'd be cool to take some images of these buildings. And the street was actually closed to traffic, so I was able to just take pictures of the buildings, and there were no cars or cars going past or anything like that. No issues with any of the focus, colors, everything was great. The camera performed perfectly. And we also found our way to an area of Miami. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to this area. It's called Wynwood. And what it is I can't really explain it. It's a place where graffiti is art, and there are streets and streets and streets filled with the most beautiful graffiti and street art that you'll ever see. It is a must-do if you're in the Miami area, and you could probably kill about 2 or 3 hours here just wandering around. And there's actually a street art museum where they took some abandoned buildings and just let these artists go crazy on the inside of it. And it's really spectacular. So these images that I've been showing you here are from there, and the camera performed perfectly here. I mean, the colors are beautiful. These are edited images, but it was just spectacular. I mean, really, really a great place to go if you're ever in the Miami area. So we came back to Delray, and I was taking some pictures at night, and I just wanted to talk about ISO with this camera. Now, coming from my D750, I knew if I went above ISO 6000, that was it. Things started to get really ugly after that, and this camera has changed my thought on ISO, and I'm going to get into that right now. Okay, if you see me looking down, it's because I made some notes. I wanted to talk about a few images that I took here. This was just on the street in Delray Beach. There's a nice downtown area, and I just took some random images, just like street photography, just walking around with the camera, just seeing what I can get. Now, the first image is of an old car that drove by. Now, this was a car that was driving by. I just turned, put the camera on it, and took one shot. This was it, one shot. I didn't crank off, 50 shots and get one good one. So this was the shot. This is ISO 32. So as you can see, very clean shot. There's no issues with this at all. I mean, you can comfortably use this camera, I think, get up to ISO probably 6,000, 7,000, 10,000, and really not worry about it. The second image here, okay, this is a little bar area. Now, there's two images I'm going to show you here. This one is the original image, and then this one is the edited image. And I wanted to show you both because I wanted to show you the dynamic range of the camera and really show you how you can push these images. Now, the dark image, the first image that I'm showing you, that's ISO 1800. So the lower your ISO is, you're going to get a cleaner image. So if you're willing to make your images a little bit darker to shoot at a low ISO, you can really, when you're editing, you can kick up the exposure and there won't be as much noise in the image. If you shoot this image at ISO 6000, It might have the same brightness as the finished image that I'm showing you here, but the difference is it's going to be a lot noisier. So that's something you want to think about when you're shooting. You want to know what you can do with the final image after, you know, you're done editing it. So if you shoot and you know that file is going to be, you know, really editable, then it's okay to be a little on the dark side. I would actually recommend that so your ISO stays lower and then you kick it up. Now I was shooting in auto ISO because I wanted to see what the camera was going to do. So that's how I went about this. Okay, the next image, then I walked up to this restaurant and they had a little bandstand right by the street, so you could walk up right behind it. And I took a picture of the drum set that was set up. Now, this picture is unedited. This is straight out of the camera. This is ISO 36,000. So while it's a little grainy, I mean, it's completely usable. I mean, this is not a horrendous image. So this is something that I wouldn't have even bothered to take a picture of if I saw that my ISO was way up at the top levels with my DSLR. So now I'm starting to learn that this camera really, you can really push the situations where it can perform really well. Okay, this next image is at ISO 18,000. Now ISO 18,000 is pretty high up there. It's an image of these train tracks. It was almost dark in this situation. Like when I took this image, it was dark. But the camera kicked it up. And what's nice about a mirrorless camera is you actually see the exposure in the screen. So the exposure in the screen was much brighter than what I was seeing with my eye. So I took this image here. It's noisy. If you get it real tight, you know, you'll see that there's grain and noise in there, but you can fix it with some noise reduction and things like that. So, you know, something like this, I wouldn't print it, but if you're going to post something online or whatever, you can get away with this. Okay, this was from the morning at the beach again. Now, this was shot with the 24-70. Okay, this isn't the 50 millimeter anymore. This image of the palm tree is actually ISO 6400. Again, I'm going to show you two images. The one on the left is straight out of the camera, and then the second one is edited. So you can see how much you can, again, you can see how you can really bring out the shadows and push the exposure on this. There's some noise in there, but it's not unusable. So I was kind of happy with the files that I was getting out of the camera and how I was able to really, you know, brighten them up quite a bit. Okay, and here's the last one. So this is the highest ISO setting that the camera has natively. Like, you know, this is where it goes and it stops when you have it on auto ISO. This was at 51,200, a picture of my daughter. Now it's grainy and it's, you know, not the best, but it was almost dark out. You know, the sun hadn't come up yet, and that's why the camera pushed it that far. And you can see that, you know, I got an exposure in the dark pretty much of her. Now I could have, if I wanted to, if I was out of auto ISO, I could have lowered this down manually to maybe, I don't know, in the teens, and it would have been a very dark image, but I could have pushed it probably when I was editing. But I wanted to see, you know, what the camera did on its own and how bad or good the files looked. So this is an example of 51,200. So all in all, the ergonomics of the camera are great. I really like it. I put a little grip extender on the bottom that makes it fit in my hand better, but for some people, you know, it might be perfect. You know, I don't know how the video quality is. I mean, I'm looking at myself in the little screen I have up here, and it looks like it's pretty good, and the eye focus is just tracking my head. So let's do a little test. Do I stay in focus? Oh, there it goes, if I found my eye. Yeah, it seems to be tracking my eye pretty well. So, and the motors on these lenses are silent. So I've had no issues with any of it. I'm really looking forward to using the camera. The battery life has been pretty good. I had a full day of shooting with it without having to change the battery. So I think that's pretty fair. With my DSLR, I could get about 800-900 shots out of it. I don't think I would be able to get that out of this, maybe 400, you know. I didn't do a lot of nighttime long exposures, but one of the things that the mirrorless cameras, you know, the screen is always on unless you have it set to go off quickly or, you know, you want to change that around. So there's always an LCD on, whether it's the one inside the viewfinder or the one on the back of the screen. So that's going to eat up battery, and that's probably why I was, you know, a full day of shooting was good for this. But I would definitely get a second battery for the camera if you plan on doing any kind of long exposures or being out for the day with it where you don't want to worry about it. Just have a backup battery. The camera feels solid. It's got a nice heft to it. It's the exact same size as the Z5 I had. So to me, it really doesn't feel that much different than the Z5, other than the, you know, like I said before, the little LCD screen on the top, which I actually like and I've been using. It's very customizable. There's two function buttons on the front next to the lens. You can change the configuration of just about every button on the camera. The eye menu can be all adjusted. It's a very customizable camera, and you can make it work for you however you want to use it. Haven't really gotten too deep into all of the settings and things like that. I know the way I like my camera set up. I'm one of those people that I use spot metering a lot. So I set one of my function buttons on the side of the lens to spot metering. And I'll use that in situations where I'm in a dark situation and there's some light and I want to adjust it. And so here's a perfect example of using spot metering. The sun came up and I was able to meter off the sun. Instead of using like a matrix metering where the whole scene tries to get balanced out, the sun is always going to be way too bright. So for these couple of images, I had my focus point on the smallest focus point I could, a single focus point, and I metered off that. And you can actually, the rest of the image is dark, but you can bring it up when you're editing, and then you still have control over the highlights and shadows in the sun itself, which is nice. So you can balance out your image. Sometimes the sun is just way overexposed and there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, hopefully I hit everything. It's been a, back and forth week here. You'll see this video on Sunday while I'll be on my way back to New York, where we just got another 6 inches of snow yesterday, so I'm not looking forward to getting home and having to shovel before we can even get out of the car. But it's been a lot worse in other parts of the country this week, so I'm fortunate to be in Florida this week. So if you have any questions about the camera, or you have any specific things you want to know, or maybe you have some tips for me since I'm new to it, let me know. But just in general, this is a really nice camera. I think I'm going to have this one for a long time. I paid $2,000 for it on bestbuy.com, and that seems to be the going price. I had the FTZ adapter already from the Z5, so I didn't need to buy that. I know you can sometimes buy them as a kit together. So if you don't have the FTZ adapter and you have older F-mount lenses, definitely get it, because I am adapting my Sigma 70-200, my Nikon 16-35, my Rokinon 135 f2, and my 8mm Rokinon fisheye are all not Z-mount lenses. So I have to use an adapter for that. The only Z-mount lenses I have are my 24-70 and my 50mm. But I can really see the sharpness and why it would be nice to have everything for this mount. But for right now, this is what I have. If you were looking at this camera and the Z5, I'm going to put the Z5 playlist that we made here, and you'll see some of the reasons why I didn't like it and ended up returning it. And I'm going to put some videos here of Canon R5 that Eric just got. So if you're kind of comparing the Nikon Z6ii to the Canon R, series of cameras, you might want to check out this. And I will see you in the next video, where it's going to be nice and cold, and I don't want to go back.